About a month ago, I found myself once again with that old familiar itch to jump into an MMO. Really find a world to just dive into head first and get lost in exploring and adventuring and doing all the different MMO stuff that you do, right? For whatever reason, The Elder Scrolls Online was particularly in the back of my mind at the time, and I figured, hey, you know what? Let me jump in and kind of see how the game's going. Initially, I didn't expect much. Every so often, I'll revisit some past games that I've played, and maybe I'll get a couple of days out of it, at most a week. But I gotta say, here we are, a month in, and well over 100 hours at this point, and I completely got sucked back into the game. I found myself really enjoying what ESO has to offer. So in this video, I want to talk with you a little bit about how my experience has been these past few weeks, what I think about the game at the moment, whether or not I think you should play ESO in 2020. Before we jump into all that, though, why don't you sit tight and listen to this word from our sponsor, huh? So today's video is being sponsored by Dr. Squatch. This was actually pretty cool for me because I've been getting in the habit of trying to use better for you, more natural hygiene products, I guess. And Dr. Squatch says they're looking to change the way men approach hygiene by providing all natural, high quality products that make you feel and smell great. They promise to use but the finest ingredients nature has to offer and a traditional cold process, and I think this is the key thing here, that helps to retain the nutrients, and they leave out a lot of the harsh preservatives and chemicals that you see used in a lot of other soaps. Their whole idea is to keep you clean, moisturized, and smelling good. With stuff like the deep sea goat's milk, pine tar, and crisp IPA, it smells great. I mean, and I appreciate the creativity that they got with these scents. So it's pretty cool. This is a pretty easy sponsorship to get behind. All natural soap that's good for you and smells good. Why the hell not? If you guys are interested, go ahead and use that link below and you can get 30% off of Dr. Squatch's best-selling products and also free shipping. Appreciate you guys sticking around for this stuff, by the way. Ad money is pretty terrible when it comes to the first few months of the year. So let's talk about The Elder Scrolls Online and how the game is in 2020. From the experience that I have, at the start of the month, I made a brand new character. I decided to go with the Sorceress just because I wanted to try something new. Traditionally, I play a lot of melee-focused characters, although honestly, you can be melee-focused no matter what class you play in ESO, which I'll talk about a little bit later. I like the Sorceress because, you know, it's magic-centric, and it's also the class with a teleport ability, which I gotta say, any class with a teleport ability automatically gets bumped up an extra ranking in my book. It's just such an awesome skill. So I played through the Sorceress, and I initially was going pretty slow. Like, I wasn't going to the point where I was sitting through all of the quest dialogue, but I was really just kind of soaking back up the world and the game and all the different systems and mechanics, trying to refamiliarize myself with what ESO was and everything that was in the game. In fact, that's the whole reason I made a new character, was just kind of to start from scratch. But then over time, I started to get into this mode where I was very focused on what I was doing. I was specifically grinding for some experience or for some loot drops, or I was specifically trying to go through all these quest lines, or specifically running around farming sky shards. I at one point got to the point where I was certainly very focused on the different tasks that I was doing. What I didn't do was let it get to the point where I was just mindlessly playing and not even having fun. I didn't want to go that far because I did want to fully experience the game and not just go straight into grind mode, which is frankly the point where you're pretty close to burning out from a lot of MMOs, at least in my experience. I was trying to do it in more of a laid-back manner. I was really taking my time going through the zones and mostly just doing the exploring, all of the kind of overland stuff that ESO has to offer. Going into the delves, one of my favorite parts of ESO, these little mini dungeons. They're just so, I've always found them so fun to explore. There's also the public dungeons, which are kind of just a blown out version of that. Going around collecting sky shards and lore books, which actually help you level up one of the skill trees in the game, and just unlocking skill points in general, which there's a lot of different avenues. You unlock skill points just by going through the main story quest, through leveling up, getting the sky shards, the main quest lines in each of the zones, going through and doing special events in the public dungeons and in regular dungeons, doing the quest in there. This game has a lot of skill points for you to unlock, which ties into kind of the flexibility of the skill point system, which is a really cool aspect of this game. So I got to max level, and then after that, I started going through the CP levels, champion points. This is a system where you can further progress all of your characters. So once you get a character to max level, you start getting experience points and leveling up your champion points, which are invested in this skill tree, this constellation skill tree, which gives you bonuses to like stamina regeneration and reduce damage from magicka or increase damage from your different spells and abilities, and you can really tailor it to your character. And then that champion point system applies to all of your characters. As I was going through the champion point level, I then got to the max gear level, which is champion point 160, and that's the highest level that any gear that drops in the game is going to be. On top of that, you still have the different gear sets and the different gear rarities. In terms of item level, CP 160 is the highest. So I reached that, and at that point, I was like, all right, let me get myself some gear. So I went around, I farmed a couple of overland sets that I really liked the set bonuses to, mixing 2 set bonuses from overland sets along with a monster set, which are these shoulder and helm pieces that come from dungeons in the game that have these really awesome bonuses. Like I've got this, I think it's called the Ice Heart set, but it basically, when I critical strike, I then form a whirling vortex of ice damage around my character. So it really helps play into a lot of the AoE grinding that you want to do in this game. And it's a good set, it looks cool, and it's a highly suggested set for the type of character that I have. So I got that, got a full purple set of CP 160 gear. I've been leveling up a lot of my crafting professions, which is a long drawn out process, ever increasing research time. And then I started doing some veteran dungeons and some of the undaunted pledge runs. And basically I just kept doing, as I'm going through the champion point levels, I've kept doing all the stuff that I enjoyed doing while leveling up. Taking my time, going through the different zones, exploring, jumping into delves and public dungeons and sky shard collecting and getting all these different skill points so that I can unlock more abilities and passives on the different skill trees. I think I'm at like 120 hours since I started playing in early January. A lot more than I really expected. I did not expect too much when I first jumped into ESO again, because I did play this game quite a bit at launch. I had a couple hundred hours in the alpha and beta testing, and then I played a bit more when the game actually fully launched. There was certainly a rush of nostalgia and me recalling a lot of what I initially enjoyed about the game, but there's been so much more over the course of these years that they've added that I'm really liking this game quite a bit right now. So what is it specifically about ESO that I found myself really drawn to, besides all of the baseline MMO stuff, like yes, leveling up your character in every MMO and getting more powerful through upgrading your skills or getting better gear, like that power progression, that is a constant draw in pretty much every one of them. That is fairly universal. But there's some things that specifically I found myself really enjoying about this particular MMO. So first and foremost, I gotta say the world and the exploration in this game, this is a setting that I just absolutely adore exploring and going through. The Elder Scrolls setting, the music, the backdrops, the lore, the history, just everything about it, I'm really fascinated with. And I had this later down, but I'll just mention it now. I think tied directly into this is the look of the game. I'm actually gonna say this is a pro and a con, because sometimes I feel like this game looks absolutely amazing, and I think it specifically comes down to the lighting, especially a lot of the times that you spend in a lot of the darker areas that are lit by like torches, like the delves and the dungeons and stuff. Sometimes when I'm in those worlds, I'm like, this is just it's just so immersive, and I love the look of this game. But there's definitely other times where like everything looks like wet and like it's made out of plastic. So it's kind of strange. This game kind of goes back and forth when it comes to how good I think it looks. But there's definitely a lot of times with a lot of the lighting and the atmosphere and the design that I just think this game looks absolutely phenomenal. But I won't lie that sometimes it looks like melted Barbie dolls. It really does. But yeah, besides the look, a lot of the stuff that I've enjoyed and nostalgic about when it comes to Elder Scrolls games is pulled right out of this game as well, and I really appreciate it. I've also really just liked everything there is to do in the zones. So every single zone within this game, and there's quite a bit by now with all of the expansions and DLC, going into these zones and just literally taking my time and going through the checklist, I've just adored, because partially that I enjoy the world and the ambiance in the Elder Scrolls universe, doing each of the things like going through the main story quest, which will take you throughout the entire zone, and in the process, going into each of the delves. checking out the points of interest, doing the public dungeons, going in and checking out public events like these Dolmen invasions where Molag Bal sends down these giant chains and a bunch of Daedra come through portals, and fighting world bosses, which are actually rather significantly difficult, and then collecting the sky shards, which is another check mark box thing to do, but it's satisfying because you unlock skill points in that process, which just gives you access to a wide variety of play. That's a general list of everything that you can do in each one of the zones in the game, but specifically diving into a few of them, the delves are something that even when this game launched, I just always gushed over. It's always been something that for whatever particular reason, I really have always enjoyed these little mini dungeons. You go into them, they'll have a little bit of story with an NPC quest or a tome that you open up, or you find like a half-eaten carcass and you report back into town or whatever. And then at the end of each of these delves, there'll usually be one little boss that you can fight. So outside of the delves and all of that, there's the public dungeons, which are basically just a bigger version of the delve. Like, not only are they bigger in the size of the actual dungeon, but usually the groups of enemies go from like 1 to 3 enemies to like 4 to 8 enemies in this one massive group. So you'll have these big group pulls, and there can be satisfaction in going in and taking that stuff on solo and taking down an entire group, and obviously reaping the loot that they drop and all the experience that you get. And there's usually several bosses in these dungeons. Like, I don't know the exact numbers, but I want to say it's anywhere between 4 and 8 on each one of these public dungeons. So that's another cool thing that you can go to. It's a harder version of the delves. For me, it was always really satisfying to go into that stuff solo and try to go through and take out all of these groups of enemies, get all of the rewards and the experience, and then also take on all of the bosses within those as well. Something else that I've really found that I just absolutely love about this game is the skill system. So let me break this down for you. Basically, you pick a class, right? And the class will give you access to 3 class-specific skill trees. And then each of those skill trees will have active and passive abilities as well as an ultimate. But then outside of your class skills and your race skill line, everything else in this game has a skill line. All of the weapons, so you're talking about dual wielding, one hand and shield, staff, restoration staff, destruction staff, bows. Every single weapon in this game has its own skill line with its own set of passives, active abilities, and an ultimate. There's also armor skill lines, so depending on the armor that you're wearing, you can customize in different kinds of play styles. There's world skill lines, these different guilds in this game which will have skill lines. There's also a PvP skill tree. There's so much diversity in this game. Every single class can be a tank or a healer or an archer or a mage, or like, you can do anything with any of the classes. Now, there's certainly some min-maxing, and there are some classes that have better utility for tanking, or some classes that have better utility for healing, but because every weapon and all of the armor types in this game, light, medium, and heavy, because all of that have their own direct skill trees and abilities and passive attached to them, you can do anything playing any single class in this game. It's so rewarding. Again, there is some min-maxing. Some classes are better than others. Some races are absolutely tailored to be like a magicka or a stamina or a tanky character based on the race passives that you have. So there is some thinking that goes along with character creation, absolutely. It's so cool the way they've done this, and I've just really enjoyed the flexibility and the different play styles and the different ways you could just take one character and engage with this game. I decided to go just with the traditional. I'm playing a sorcerer, I'm magicka focused, I'm running around doing a lot of lightning damage with destruction staffs, but at any point, if I want, I can easily become a very competent healer. All I really need is that light armor to increase my magicka capabilities, and then a restoration staff, and that alone makes me a pretty damn good healer. Mix that with a couple of the world skill trees or the guild skill trees that are in this game, and I'm pretty damn set to be a healer for dungeons. So it's a very cool system. I really appreciate what they did with the skill system in this game. I found myself really enjoying the flexibility that offers. I also got to say something else that I've liked about ESO has been just how there's so much to do. There's been so much DLC and chapter additions since the game first launched, and they've been adding new systems to the game over time. Like, they added the thievery system, they've added a bunch of different world skill trees, they've added the housing systems, and just yesterday I stepped into the Clockwork City for the first time. I don't know what the hell's going on there. It quite clearly seems to be this like pretty massive labyrinth of this Dwemer ancient city history. I don't know, but it's been so cool to not only come back to this game and remember a lot of the places that I initially saw when I first played through ESO, but to see all of these new places. and I've barely scratched the surface. I think I've only seen like half of the landmass that is in ESO at the moment in all of this time that I've played for this past month. I'm gushing over a lot of stuff, and I do gotta say there are some stuff that I don't particularly love. Now, like I just mentioned, for example, a lot has been added to this game, but I think that also comes at the cost of, like, as a returning player, I was very confused by all of the separation between the DLCs and chapters. Basically, what it seems is happening, and I might be slightly off on this, correct me in the comments, but it seems like every so often they release like multiple DLCs and a chapter, and they're separated into these different things that you can purchase piecemeal. So each little section, it's kind of a minor complaint because I'm not expecting to get all of the new stuff that's come to this game since I played it 5 years ago for free just by buying the monthly sub, coming back to the game. And I can imagine as well for a new player who never played any ESO in the past, it feels a little convoluted to me. All this separation of these differences, DLC content, but also chapter content, and you buy them separately, or you get some of it for free with the sub, but not all of it. I digress. Again, I'm not expecting to be handed all of the new stuff that they've worked on over 5 years free of charge, or just by paying $15 a month. Which reminds me and leads into the next thing, which is the inventory system in this game. I think is kind of rubbish. You can make it a bit easier by using some add-ons and stuff, but really the big inconvenience is there's so many crafting items that you'll pick up in the world through provisioning, blacksmithing, clothing, woodworking, the enchanting system. There's like 8 or something crafting skill trees. Along with that, there's a lot of crafting items. But basically what'll happen is if you're going through and playing the game and you're like looting barrels and picking up stuff off NPCs or gathering some of the materials in the world, your inventory space will fill up incredibly quickly. They have this huge incentive with, if you pay the monthly subscription, you get a bunch of bonuses, like you get 10% more experience gain and free access to the DLCs that I mentioned earlier, which again, that's a pretty awesome bonus and benefit. Probably the biggest reason that I found that it makes it worthwhile is you get a craft bag, and all of these crafting items that would otherwise constantly fill up your bag, they're gonna get put into this bottomless pit of a crafting bag. So basically what I'm saying is, I understand why they're trying to use that as an incentive to push their monthly subscription, but boy oh boy, I think for the respect of their player base, it would be really nice if just everybody got access to the crafting bag. I also gotta say something that there's absolutely a pay for convenience feature to this game. Like, there's a lot of really nice beneficial stuff that you can ease the grind and what have you by interacting with a cash shop. I mean, a great example again is the crafting bag that you get from purchasing ESO Plus. It seems like there's a lot of other stuff that you can do. Like, I'm pretty sure you can purchase experience potions or scrolls in the cash shop. I haven't done it personally, but I swear that I've seen that or heard about that. I don't think it's a huge deal because leveling up in and of itself wasn't so difficult. Like, it's not too hard to get to max character level and to get to that max gear level of CP 160. But I'm not really worried about it because I have been thoroughly enjoying the game and I haven't really touched much of that endgame stuff. Interestingly enough, as someone who's played a lot of MMOs and traditionally blitzes straight to that endgame system and goes through that grind almost immediately, I've gotten to the point where I could start doing it. I'm not bothered. There's so much else for me to do that I've been enjoying. So yeah, you can pay for convenience, you can pay for some acceleration, you should know that. And I think the last pain point that I have to mention still, it's the combat. I don't dislike the combat, but there's always been something that just feels a little bit off. The combat doesn't feel super tight and responsive. And I don't know if it's because it's kind of got that soft lock system where it's kind of tab targeting, but it's kind of not. Like, I can hit tab and lock onto a specific enemy, but basically if you point your crosshairs to an enemy, you're gonna hit the enemy. But there's just always been something about the responsiveness of the combat that's always felt a little floaty, a little delayed, and I just don't know. I can't quite put my finger on exactly what it is. I know a lot of people have talked about it. It's a pretty common complaint with this game in particular. The combat is something that comes up fairly regularly when people have negative things to say about ESO. This is one of the aspects that people point to. So that's been my experience with ESO so far. As I've said, I've really enjoyed a lot of this game, and there's still a lot of stuff that I have barely even touched. I gotta say that. Like, I've barely touched the hard mode dungeons. I haven't stepped into the arenas, which are the staged PvE content. I also haven't gone into trials. I haven't done any of the PvP since I've come back. I haven't stepped into the battlegrounds, which are the more confined PvP, or Cyrodiil, which is that big, massive landmass in the middle of the map. Kind of constant tug of war is taking place. I haven't min-maxed my sets. Like, I have a full set of purple gear, but I haven't min-maxed the traits. Like, I should be going for full divines for most of my stuff, mixing up some other stuff in there. I also haven't upgraded my purple gear to yellow gear, which is the highest rarity, but my gear is perfectly adequate for everything that I've been doing and enjoying. I also haven't gotten to kind of the CP endgame minimum, as far as I can tell, which is CP 300, and that's a requirement for a lot of the DLC veteran dungeons in this game, so I haven't touched any of those. I also haven't touched the housing system, which I guarantee I would probably like, especially the way that I'm playing this game right now. But even without touching much of the end game, I absolutely recommend ESO. I've been having such a good time revisiting. I think the game has really held up, and maybe I shouldn't be, but I was so surprised to just be this engrossed coming back to this game. I've just really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to continuing to plug away and finally start diving into some of that end game. But yeah, even without getting to the end game, which I fully admit for most MMO players, that is what matters the most. That is what brings the long-term engagement. I've played this game for a month. I haven't touched the end game, but I've had a really good time. I'm gonna keep going through the different zones, acquiring more skill points, unlocking the skill shards, and doing the main story quest, exploring and going through the delves, and just using that as a way to continue to level up my champion points, continue to make my character more powerful. I'll worry about min-maxing my gear later, and I'll worry about this end game stuff later, but so far, the experience has been great. I've really liked this game, and I wholeheartedly recommend it. It's pretty good. I think you should check it out. Oh, one more thing. I almost got all the way to the end of this video without mentioning that they've got a big new update coming this year. It's going to be the Skyrim update, the Dark Heart of Skyrim. With a lot of these updates, like I talked about earlier, it's broken up into DLCs and chapters. First DLC adds a pair of dungeons, then there's the chapter, which is going to add a sizable portion of like Western Skyrim. So that's going to be cool. I mean, me getting back into this game right now, it couldn't be more perfect because Skyrim is one of my favorite games of all time. So it's going to be interesting checking that out inside of this game. But man, it's what a pleasant surprise this has been. I've been genuinely really enjoying it. So thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you later.